Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to Jets Talk Now. I'm Paul Fiore. Thanks for joining me today. Please click like and subscribe. It's Thursday. We have, some Jets news today. They finalized their coaching staff permanently for 2026. Lots of new names, obviously. We can go through that real quick. A couple of notable names that were added on defense. We've talked a lot about the offense already. But today I wanted to have a conversation about, this this weird timeline we're in where it feels very much like a large segment of the Jet fan base, I would put myself in that, has a different view and perspective of where the Jets are and what Aaron Glenn's trying to do. And when you have a different goal, you could have competing visions for what the team should do in 2026 that may negatively impact the long term for this team, right? I mean, that's just the reality. And so we should get into that a little bit. What the Jets decide to do in 2026 in free agency and the draft and at quarterback is probably predicated on Aaron Glenn trying to keep his job, right? It's not, I don't think, a pure long-term view. I think it's going to be very short-term mindset-wise, which, again, and depends on where you fall in this, because some people are going to take it in a certain way, but we'll get there. Let's just first talk about kind of the finalizing of the staff, and then we can kind of go from there. But this is what we have right now, from an earlier tweet from Zach Rosenblatt. So on the offense, you have the OC Frank Reich, passing game coordinator Seth Ryan, QB's coach Bill Musgrave, RB running back coach is a holdover Nick McKissick Luke, wide receivers coach Sean Jefferson, who seems to have 9 lives. He's now made it through an entire staff upheaval twice. Tight ends coach Alfredo Roberts from Pittsburgh, and offensive line coach Steve Hayden, who is also a holdover, and probably the most deserving holdover, from that list, because he did a good job. On the defensive side, it's essentially an all new staff except for Chris Harris. You have Brian Duker, who's the DC in name, probably heavily involved in the game plan, but won't be calling the plays. At least that's the assumption. Carl Dunbar, who's a longtime D-line coach, former Jet coach, comes from Pittsburgh. Very, very, very well respected. Excellent hire. Linebackers coach Ben Bowling. He's from the Texans. I would say that's a very good hire as well, considering how good the Texans D has been. Chris Harris remains as your DB coach. I have mixed feelings on that. I guess you can say that Brandon Stevens showed improvement, and when they were healthy, the DBs looked okay. But, they didn't have one interception, so whatever. Ryan Slowick, Bobby's brother, is a safeties coach coming over from Miami. And then you have Ronald Booker, who I don't know much about. The defensive side of the ball is much younger on the coaching staff than the offense, aside from Seth Ryan, right? I mean, the Jets clearly went for, two different mindsets here. On the offensive side of the ball, with Glenn now going from this CEO coach mentality to more of a defensive coach mentality, he brought in Frank Reich because he wants him to essentially be the head coach of the offense, right? And you've heard other reporters say this, and it's clear what he's doing. So he kind of eschewed the Tanner Engstrands of the world, the younger, maybe innovative mindset, passing game planning guy who's learning on the job for a guy that's been in the league forever. You know, he's got all the experience of the world in Frank Reich. He's then got Bill Musgrave, who's been in the league, you know, since I was in my early 20s, you know, and I'm 51 today, who's coached Matt Ryan, Derek Carr. I mean, you can go, I think he coached Jeff George going back. So this guy's been around forever. These aren't guys that like are learning on the job, right? So what he's going for on offense, because he's going to be paying so much attention to defense, is he's taking this mentality. And clearly, to me, he's taking this mentality of, this is your job. I'm going to run the defense. I'll still be the head coach for the team, and you know, from a messaging standpoint and all of that. But I don't want to worry about the offense. Like, I need a guy in there that I can trust. I have a relationship with, who's gonna, you know, I trust him that he's gonna do the right thing by me to try to raise the floor of this team. Now, as a fan, I understand why he's doing it, right? Doesn't mean I agree with it. It doesn't mean that I'm upset with it either. I mean, I just, you know, I try to look at things through a prism of unemotional when it comes to these types of things, unless there's something egregious, or if there's games that make me crazy, then obviously I get emotional. But in this situation, you have a head coach coming off of a 3-win season. You have a fan base that is 75% out on him as a head coach. And, you know, betting odds and everyone that you look into will say, and talked about will say, he's on the hot seat. So it's a rational thought process from him as the head coach, who is trying to keep his job, to bring in a experienced offensive staff with little risk that they will not know what the hell they're doing. Doesn't mean they'll be good, but they'll be professional, experienced, kind of know what they want to do. They'll have a game plan, right? They'll have a very clear vision of what they want their quarterback to do. You know, Engstrand, for all of the things that I liked about him, his in-game play calling was a work in progress. And I'm guessing that a guy like Frank Reich wasn't coming in here unless he was given play calling, which is probably what led to Tanner leaving. So I think what originally was probably going to happen was they were going to keep Tanner Engstrand as the OC and try to bring in like a senior offensive assistant, like a Frank Reich, or an advisor kind of role. And Reich probably would not come here unless he was getting to run the show. And so they made a calculated decision that we need to move on. Now, purely from shuffling chairs on the Titanic, I think the offense is to be determined whether it's going to work out or not. Defensively, he did exactly what he should do if you couldn't land the big name. He's calling the plays. He's the guy that's going to make the decisions. Whether that was him that made that call or Woody, it's irrelevant. At the end of the day, it was the right decision. Go down with the ship on your own terms. The guys he brought in, aside from like a Carl Dunbar, there were a lot of younger, kind of newer names that, you know, maybe you feel good about. And I think if I'm thinking about what Aaron Glenn, if I can put myself in Aaron Glenn's shoes, he's looking at it from this perspective. I'm going to make Brian Duker my DC. He's a young guy. We think similarly. He's going to help me a lot in the vision and the strategy, the game planning. I'm going to call the plays. If it works out, they'll reach a point where I could probably go back to being the CEO coach and let Duker take over play calling. Not this year, but maybe if I survive year 2, maybe it's year 3 or year 4, if I'm being optimistic, that I can then become what I wanted to be day 1. But right now I can't, because the defensive side of the ball is a disaster. That's, I think, where his mindset is. So let me get these guys in here who are going to follow my system. It's going to be cohesive. There's not going to be blending between the Wilkes and the Glenn thought process. And again, if it was Wink Martindale, I thought it would have been a bad hire. It would have been a big name with a bad hire. So on defense, I actually align with what he's doing. On offense, I understand what he's doing. And I think you can make the argument it's better on paper than it was last year. Certainly at the passing game. I mean, sorry, the QB's coach, Charles London, was terrible. I don't think he had any right having that job. Bill Musgrave, whether you like him or not, and he's only 50. By the way, he's 58. Like, he's 6.5 years older than me. The guy looks like he's like 80. I don't know if he's a heavy drinker or not, but the dude is weathered. But he's only 58. I mean, he's been around for a really long time, but he's 58. He's not 78. So it's just, you look at pictures of him, you're like, whoa. I mean, unless I look that old, and I just don't feel like I look that old. I don't know. But anyway, Frank Reich, 64. The one inspiring hire there from an upside perspective is Seth Ryan as the pass game coordinator. He's only, 31, 32. Maybe Reich's hope is he brought in a bunch of, he also brought in his Stanford guys. Maybe the hope here with Reich is, again, I'm thinking what their short-term and long-term is. Reich comes in for 2 years, let's say. Glenn's plan, hey, man, come in for 2 years. Help me get this ship steered in the right direction. Let's stabilize the offense. Let's find a young quarterback that we can develop. And then I can hand the reins to Seth Ryan if he works out, right? I mean, I can see that being what their vision might be. If we're just, again, take emotion out of this. Take your, I hate Aaron Glenn bias out of this if you have that, or I love everything Aaron Glenn does bias if you have that, and just try to look at it from the lens of what's he thinking. And I think the way he's viewing the world is, I've got to make it through year 2. And the best way I can make it through year 2 is bring in some experienced guys on offense, get a young guy in here that I know from Detroit that's on the Ben Johnson tree. Reich likes to. We know Reich likes Ben Johnson's offense. We've heard this from other reporting. And I can worry about the defense. I trust Frank to fix my offense. Will it work? I mean, the Jets won 3 games. If you look at the history of coaches that win 3 games in their first season, actually working out long term for that exact team, the success rate is, minute. So it's not likely to work, but you understand why he did it. You do. Okay. Now this goes into the bigger picture on Jets fans at large. Not all. There's a bunch of Jet fans that want to do what Aaron Glenn's trying to do. But let's, I've run polls on this on my X account. This is what I think. I think there's like a 70-30 split amongst the fan base, where about 70% of the fan base who's out on Glenn doesn't want to win 7 games next year, save his job, lose the number 1 pick in the 2027 draft, and not have a path to Arch Manning. I think that's better than 50. Let's just say it's better than 50% of the fan base is actually in the active mindset of not wanting to win too many games in 2026 because they don't expect the Jets to land a quarterback, free agency success, and draft success that would lead them to the playoffs in 2026. So they'd rather be awful than mediocre, middling, and that's their mindset. So whenever whether it's me posting it or others talking about it, when names come up that could potentially be quarterbacks for 2026, you get this visceral reaction from people that's very negative. But they don't really have solutions other than some crazy big swing that likely won't happen, or we're going to get our quarterback in 2027. Now, again, I said this to you in the beginning. I'm more in the camp, believe it or not, of if we're not going to be a playoff team and we don't have a quarterback on our roster that we know is the long-term answer, having a second bad season back-to-back gives us a better chance at securing the QB in 27. Now, do I want to watch bad football again? I don't. But, I also don't want a 6-win team with a stopgap quarterback and not a path to QB1 in 27. Now, the counter argument to this, and I'm just giving you all the points. The counter argument is to just have 3 first-round draft picks in 2027. We'll worry about 27 when we get there. Go win football games now. And I think Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji are thinking that way. That's what I think. And you can agree or disagree with that. But I'm going to speak to what the Jets are looking to do in my mind, which is to secure their jobs going into year 3 with the opportunity to use the draft capital they just secured. That's what I think 2026 is all about. Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji trying to find a path forward to 2027. How do you get there? Okay. There's a few ways you can look at this. I think everyone keeps saying that they need to draft Ty Simpson, or they're going to draft Ty Simpson, early because they want to have the future quarterback on the roster. The challenge with that is if you draft Ty Simpson at 16 as a first-round draft pick, you're committing significant dollars, guaranteed money to him. And if he doesn't show much, you're asking Woody to eat more money on top of having, on top of having to draft another quarterback in 2027. I don't think that they're going to do that. I actually think that if Simpson's there at 33 or 44, they would do it. But as I've thought through this, I think it's more likely the Jets are going to make a play for one of Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, Jacoby Brisset. And their plan B, because I think that's plan A. Now, their plan B might be a Mariota. I don't think their plan A is Malik Willis. 6 games of a sample size is not something you bet on for your hope to get to 2027 as a head coach or GM. And I also think Malik Willis is going to have options outside of the Jets that he'd rather take. That's just my personal view. We can go down the list of all these quarterbacks, but there's none of them that are going to inspire you with any level of confidence. Some people have mentioned Joe Milton. Why would Dallas trade Joe Milton with, Dak has had injury history? If you feel good about Joe Milton, what are they going to get for him? Right? You just wind up having to go draft another backup quarterback. I don't see that. I do think there's a world where Arizona keeps Jacoby Brisset, but let's say they don't. Then I can see the Jets going after Jacoby Brisset in a trade. Wouldn't cost them a lot. Derek Carr in a trade wouldn't cost them a lot if he's healthy. Kirk Cousins will likely get released. Won't cost them a lot. But all 3 of those guys will give you professional, if Carr's healthy. All 3 of those guys give you professional quarterback play behind center, which gives you the best opportunity as the head coach to get to 2027. Again, as fans, we may hate that. We may look at that and go, great. So they bring in Derek Carr. He wins 6 games. The defense looks better. Aaron Glenn gets to keep his job. And now he's going to go and get the quarterback in 2027. I got to count on him. Well, they don't care about what our feelings are as fans, right? They care about trying to win and keep their jobs. And again, it is a timeline that's different. That's why in a lot of ways people would say, well, if they would have blown everybody out of here after the first year, you'd have a coaching staff on the same timeline as the fan base, which would mean we know we're not getting Mendoza. We're not going to draft a quarterback in 2026, and it's year 0. And so if we have a bad year, we go into year 2 with the number 1 draft pick. Who cares? These guys won't get an opportunity with the number 1 draft pick. And you have to understand what that matters in this conversation. Aaron Glenn does not want to go 3-14 again. He will not have a job. He just won't. So you have to then understand where they're coming from. And then as fans, we have to try to figure out how do we wrap our arms around this? Now, there's a section of the fan base will say, go win games. I don't care if you win 7 games, 8 games. If you're drafting 14 or 15, we'll figure it out. We have 3 first-round draft picks. We can trade up. Now, that may be true, but we don't know 100% if teams ahead of them would be willing to trade up if they don't have a quarterback either. The one saving grace going into 2027 draft is there's like 10 guys. I saw this list and I forgot, I should have pulled it up, but there's like 10 guys pre-ranked for 2027 that could be first round grade draft picks at the quarterback position. And even if there's 7, if the Jets are drafting 14, the odds are they're not going to be 7 QBs that go ahead of them. They'll be able to get a guy. And I can just name off the top of my head a bunch, right? Like it doesn't take a lot, but you got Arch, you got Julian Sane, right? You got Dante Moore, you got CJ Carr, you got Darian Mensah. I mean, that's 5 just off the top of my head. You have the kid from UNT that just transferred to Oklahoma. I think he's going to run up the ranks quickly. He may not come out, but he's going to be someone that you're going to look at. You have Levitt. I mean, so like, there's 7 guys, and the list goes on. So, I think there's a real chance that like these guys have already done their homework. Like if you don't think that Muji and the scouting department already knows what the 27 class might look like at the quarterback position, and so they're saying, screw it, we're going to go try to win as many games as we can, keep our jobs. I just don't think that you're not thinking the way they would be thinking. And again, you don't have to agree with this. I think that this is the way they're going to play it. I think they're going to get themselves a veteran that they think that can give them a chance to have a year 3. They may take a swing on a guy like a Drew Aller later in the draft. I know a lot of people don't like Drew Aller, but they probably like his physical traits. He's got a good arm. He's a big kid. Maybe they look at it as somebody that Musgrave can develop. Okay. But I think the plan is not, we're going to go win 10 games. I think it's like, go win 6 games, 7 games, make the defense significantly better, and sell Woody on, now let's go get our quarterback in 2027. I truly believe that. Now, if they get a Derek Carr, and I know I pissed off a lot of people with my tweet on this, and look, I'm not telling you what I would do here, because what I would do is not what these guys would do at this point. They won't do it because it will lead to them getting fired. And I understand that. So what's the point of me giving, like, in my worldview, right? I'm not going after Ty Simpson, Nussmeier, Chambliss. I'm not going after those guys. I'm not wasting first round, second round draft capital on anybody not named Fernando Mendoza. I'm just not. I hope they don't. As far as a veteran goes, I'm not giving anybody keys to 2027 draft capital to go get a name in here just for the sake of getting a name in here. I'm fine with, getting a Marcus Mariota to play quarterback and picking a wide receiver 2 in the draft at 16, who we can know will have a completely, from my view, if it was me, right, I'm getting my wide receiver 2 in the draft. I'm getting like a Marcus Mariota type as my stopgap. I'm taking a swing on a quarterback later in the draft. And I don't care about my wins and losses as much in 26 because I'm getting my QB in 27. That's how I'm thinking as a fan of this team. But I understand the other point of view. So the timelines don't align for the vast majority of this fan base, which is going to lead to challenges. I think the Jets are not going to be terrible this year. I don't think this coaching staff, if you're just being honest, is terrible. They're not. I see people on Twitter saying it's the worst. It's not the worst. It's not. Frank Reich is a professional OC. Bill Musgrave is a professional quarterbacks coach, right? They have a good offensive line. They will add to their weapons. If they get competent quarterback play, By default, they will win more than 3 games next year. Will they only win 6? Maybe. Will that piss a bunch of you guys off? And maybe me too? Maybe. But my one thing that I'm kind of looking at that's making me calm about this is, man, the 2027 class could be really, really, really good. And I don't expect Arch Manning to be a Jet because I don't think we're going to be the worst team in football. But could we get Julian Sayin? Could we get a Mensa? Could we get a Dante Moore on the second go round? Since he didn't go and declare this year. All these guys, Levitt. I mean, there's just a lot of guys. CJ Carr, I like him a lot, right? Like, I think the Jets will get a quarterback in 27 that would be considered someone that would be higher than Ty Simpson this year. That's why I don't want to draft. I don't want to draft Ty Simpson this year because as the number 2 quarterback in this draft, he might not be as good as the number 5 quarterback in next year's draft. And you're going to waste a 16th pick on him, likely to get him. Because I don't think he's there at 33. He certainly won't be there at 44. And Garrett Nussmeier, no. I'm sorry. He's 6'1"-ish. He's got small hands. He doesn't have a cannon for an arm. He's not super athletic. Like, there's nothing that stands out to me about Nussmeier that would make me want to reach for him. Chambliss, too small. And I'll be honest, he's 24 going on 25, and he's fighting for his life to stay in college. I don't like the mindset. I'm not there with him. I take a swing on Aller. I take a swing on Taylor Green. I mean, I know he's a massive project, but why not? Why not? So that's kind of where I think that the differences lie in the fans and this current regime. Not all fans. I think there's a bunch of fans that are in the same boat as Aaron Glenn. Go win games, be competent looking, get into the 2027. We'll worry about the quarterback in 2027. In that world, you're probably on the side of Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, Jacoby Brisset. Be decent. If you are tank for Arch, screw it all, then you'd probably be good with Brady Cook starting right now. But there's no world where that happens because Aaron Glenn doesn't want that. The only way this would have been different, and by the hires they've made, this is not the case. At the end of the season, if they went 3-14 and Aaron Glenn had his meeting in Florida at Woody's, mansion, if he and Woody agreed that, look, we're not going to get Mendoza. We need a quarterback. We want our own guy. It's best for cap purposes and everything else. It won't be till 27, so we're not going to be good in 26 again. And Woody's like, yeah, I'm good with you, and I have a 3-year plan with you, and you're not going to lose your job. If that was the case, then you would have seen the offensive staff come back. Engstrand would not have gotten fired. Okay? They wouldn't have brought in all these guys. Glenn might still have called plays on defense. That might have still happened. But the way they went about their offensive staff tells you everything about Aaron Glenn fighting for his job in 2026. That's my perspective. Be curious to see what you think. Please comment below. Who do you guys want as quarterback for 2026? Do you want them to tank? Do you want them to try to win some games and then figure out the QB in 27? I think it's 70-30 from everything that I see, that most people want them to just be terrible or surprise the hell out of you and be a good team. Nobody wants them to be, not nobody, but a small segment of the population is go win 6 or 7 games and save your job. But that's exactly, I think, how this team is operating. So it's a fascinating, it's kind of a fascinating psychological study in our fan base right now at the time where we are at. And also it will be interesting to see, does Aaron Glenn find a way to save his job by these moves and get the opportunity to make that draft pick in 2027? Appreciate you guys. Hope everyone has an awesome weekend. I will talk to you when there's more news. I'll break in if there's something that comes up, doubtful. But we'll chat soon. Talk to you.